It's a difficult time for a lot of people right now. I think for a lot of Christians, we're trying to find our way in the 21st century. The other day, a friend of mine asked me how I was doing, and they had some things they wanted to confess to me about poverty and the way they were interacting with people who were in panhandling situations and people who were struggling to make it. They were provoked by some of the things I be writing on my website and on Facebook, and I just want to take a moment just to share some things that they were struggling with. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to do that as well. The last couple of years, I've had to reflect on the fact that two different things have caused me to think, what? If I wasn't a Christian now, these two different experiences of seeing how Christians respond and live out their faith would probably prevent me from being a Christian. The first was a couple years back when a lot of the police shootings were happening with African American males, and seeing the responses from the Christian community, mainly the evangelical church, because that's where I hang out most of the time. And what I was finding was, for those white brothers and sisters of the evangelical persuasion, they were noticeably silent a lot of times. As men and women of African American descent, like myself, who are Black, African American, they were looking for some sympathy to be heard. And a lot of times what would be talked about would be, we have to believe in Jesus. We have to understand that this world is passing away. Just believe the gospel. And, thinking and reflecting on that, I just be like, wow, that's kind of tough, because you don't apply that to things like, abortion. You don't apply that to things about immigration or what's going on in Israel. Things need to be done now. Legislation needs to happen now. Where is the love that's supposed to happen for all brothers and sisters? And so for that period of time, if I wasn't a Christian, I would be like, wow, based off of their responses or the lack thereof, I probably wouldn't be a Christian. And now, second experience, and my friend had asked me, she had commented, it seems like I was being a defender of Donald Trump, and I had thought about that, and I had to respond this way. I didn't vote for the man. I didn't think we had any good options at all of the two that were pushed forward in the media and on the ticket. I would hope that in the future we would have better men and women who would seek this office. But what I found is, and what is disheartening to me lately, and if I was not a Christian now, this behavior would seriously have me consider, do I really want to be a Christian? Is the way that Christians talk about the current president, Donald Trump, and the way that he is dehumanized, the way that he is denigrated, the way that he is not shown any type of grace and mercy. And a lot of the times, I see this coming from men and women who are of the more liberal, progressive wing of Christianity, who are fighting for mercy and grace for, like in the state of Arkansas, men who are on death row, that they are in need of grace and mercy. But then I ask myself, where is the grace and mercy for Donald Trump? We see a lot of talk about inclusion and equality and welcoming all people. And I wonder, where is that for this man? I hear a lot about, welcoming people and loving your neighbor and, being just. And I ask, where is that given to this man? Why is he the exception? Now, he has said some ridiculous things. I got that some of his decisions are not the most wise. But I wonder, why is he the exception? Because when I look in the book, and this is one of the things I'm continually wrestling with, is these words of what it means to love your neighbor as yourself. What does it mean to love your enemy, the other? What does it mean to, when you're asked to go 1 mile, you go 2? What does it mean to, when you're struck on one cheek, that you're supposed to turn and give the other? What is that? What does it mean when that lawyer asks, who is my neighbor? And it is a Samaritan who is the hero of the story. And so I wonder why we were not wrestling deeply with the fact that Donald Trump, with all of his ails and failings and sins and missteps, is my neighbor. And so the way that conservative evangelicals have reacted to African American calls for justice in regards to police shootings, and then the way that liberal type Christians are speaking and having a bitterness, it seems, because of Donald Trump, and even a borderline hatred of this man. These two experiences, I would ask myself, I was not a Christian now, would I become one? Because the way that a lot of us behave, it doesn't reflect what the Great Commandment says of loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself. And so that's why it's important that humanity matters. Humanity matters because we're all made in the image and likeness of God. Every one of us have the same essence, regardless of our ethnicity, regardless of our politics, regardless of our finances. And then I would say this, that we have to learn not to suffer the error of the 80s of the moral majority, where conservative Christians married themselves to politics. And now it looks like those who are more liberal in their Christianity are seeking to marry themselves to politics. We have to stand above all of these, because this is Rome. United States is just another Rome. And Jesus had very little to say about Herod. He had very little to say about Caesar, but he had a lot to say about his kingdom. And we need to pursue ways to have an imagination that pursues a way that just shakes the world. And so I guess the last thing I would think about and to imagine is this: would I share the Lord's table with Donald Trump? He has professed himself to be a Christian. So would I share the Lord's table, the Eucharist, communion with Donald Trump? Would I walk hand in hand with him, shoulder to shoulder with him, pick up that one bread and that one cup, and that we would share together. It's something to think about.